Hello, everyone, and welcome to a Tuesday edition of the MSP Initiative Live. Man, it's mid-October, and before you know it, it's going to be the holidays. You're going to be on like food coma mode, and then the end of the year will come, and 2022 will be in the book. And like everybody still thinks like we're still catching up for 2020 and 21. Nope, it's going to be 2023 before you know it. But lots of good things happening between now and the end of the year. Let me just do some quick housekeeping, and then we will, get on with the good stuff. So you'll find everything about us and MSP Initiative on mspinitiative.com. I know initiative is sometimes hard to spell, but trust me, if you go to mspinitiative.com, this session and every other session we've ever done will be in podcast and video format. You will see our last remaining community block party coming up on November 9th. That's right, right around the corner in Orlando. Check it out. We're bringing in the All-American Redirects for a private concert for the MSP and IT community. So if you're in town for various conferences and you know the names of, definitely stop by, throw your name, register for a ticket. Costs you absolutely nothing, and we'd love to see you there. Lastly, we're on one of two remaining Channel Strong tours. So one's happening right now. The bus and the team are out in Vegas yesterday, Phoenix today, San Diego tomorrow, and Irvine, California on Thursday to close out the week. The last tour will be at the very end of November, and like first couple of days of December will be all through Florida, Fort Lauderdale, Tampa, Orlando, and then a last stop in Atlanta. So if you're in any one of those areas, you can literally just jump in your car, pop out, grab a sandwich, a beer, learn a few things, talk to your peers in the area. No boats, planes, or trains needed. So that is the housekeeping. I like to welcome to the show, not Eric Torres, like it says on there. I'll let him give you his story, but I've known this gentleman for a very long time. He's been in, I call it the sandbox, for a while. You've probably seen him with a few separate companies, but right now with Scalepad. So Luis, go ahead and for anyone who hasn't run into you before, why don't you give him a little bit of your story?
Well, thanks, George. Good to be here, man. Thanks for the invite. I realize we did a bait and switch on you here. I just covering for Eric. He had a couple of commitments that he couldn't change over, but thanks for letting me be on. Yeah, so I've been primarily an MSP. I think that's sort of where I come from. I in all the roles I've had, I always feel like I'm an MSP advocate and wearing the MSP hat, certainly. And so 16 plus years of having an MSP, which I sold earlier this year to an outfit here in Canada called Fully Managed. So now in a bit of that transition, but I've been working in or around SaaS since 2013 when I started my own platform that sold to IT Glue. That's how I came to be at IT Glue for a few years. Then went to Enable for about a year and a half during the pandemic and jumped over to Scalepad about a year ago, last September 2021. And here we are doing the good work at Scalepad and trying to bring some of our products and functionality, efficiency, and revenue generating capabilities to MSPs everywhere.
Awesome. So let's zoom out. I actually was just over in the UK at the end of last week with our good friends from the network group. It was nice to see those guys. I hadn't been over in the UK for some time, but they're definitely talking about their concerns coming up here into 2023 and the economy and the recession and everything comes along with that. I assume you're hearing that up in Canada. We're surely hearing it down here in the States. What's the vibe? What are you hearing about that?
Well, certainly, I think the financial gurus and the people on the airwaves are starting to talk about, the true recession potentially coming. And I think it's important to kind of look at the past to see how some of the different types of businesses that we support as MSPs, react in situations like that. So I think it's good to know. It's good to have these conversations with clients to be like, hey, I realize a recession is coming along. what are some of your plans? How will this inhibit your growth? And I think being prepared for that is key. But I think the pandemic showed us a bit of the knee-jerk reaction to a recession, in the sense that what you see happen is some businesses immediately stop their spending, sort of as a precautionary measure. But business has to continue, and so how are MSPs supposed to deal with this? Certainly, and a self-serving comment is a Scalepad, for example. One of the things we saw during the pandemic is people doubled down on doing some of the warranty marketplace stuff. And so rather than replacing hardware at a much larger cost, if it was still functional and doing this job, they could at least extend the coverage and be protected and give those clients that peace of mind. So we're seeing a little bit of that, and having that option as an MSP to be like, yeah, we don't need you to replace this right away. If we can protect it for another year, 2 years, while we get out of the tail end of the recession, then that's great. I think it gives clients a little bit of choice and flexibility in how they manage a bit of that equipment hardware expense, which is always daunting to look at.
I mean, for whatever it's worth, I don't think, I still know that people are having a hard time getting equipment. There's just constant still back ordering.
Yeah,
And like,
supply chain.
yeah, people are like, oh, out of stock, don't know, don't have a date, we'll let you know. And then like you're literally riding on a guess. I don't know why that hasn't caught up since things kind of reopened again, but it seems to be consistent in certain categories, especially like in server infrastructure and hardware, stuff like that.
And
Yeah,
networking was equally troubling because now it's, I think, alleviated a tiny bit, but back in like February, March, we were placing orders that were like had a 10-month ETA, and so like you can't work within those timeframes for the most part, and clients certainly never give you that kind of like upfront planning for you to deal with that. So it makes it, I think, troublesome down the line for MSPs as well, no doubt.
100%. You did a presentation a few times. Before you sold your MSP, where you were pretty much running an MSP on like 2 people, and a lot of automation, right? I think what was the presentation? How to run a $1.2 million MSP with 2 people or something like
That's
that.
the one. Yeah, that's the one. That was my talk track for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we went. I had the unique opportunity that I had sold my MSP one time before, and that was back in 2011. And I left that situation. It was fully managed again. So the second transaction was fully managed. But the first time around, one of the things that happened during that year transition was that it forced me to let go of all the break fix type of work that I had and truly transition to pure MSP recurring revenue play. And I think that is one of the areas in particular where a lot of MSPs struggle in trying to drive that recurring revenue and sort of breaking through the glass ceiling of how much they can earn in their business and whatnot. And so what I found is when I went back on my own in I guess 2012, late 2012 or so, it was only recurring revenue clients, and at that point I was able to sort of get really picky with how we went forward with new clients, and we kind of just did not do any break fix at all. And I think that was sort of the early stages of being able to grow the business to that number, with my first business partner Simon, who came on board in 2013. Now I will say also, I think one of the misconceptions is that you can maybe do that with if you're a single owner and you hire people. It's not the same as having 2 business owners that are putting in occasionally the 14-16 hour days to make that work and to drive those projects and to do some of that stuff. And so I think the growth was certainly enabled by having 2 owner operators that were sort of digging in really deep on the work. So
Yeah, I there definitely is the idea that, I've heard some people say, hey, we might cut down the 4-day weeks instead of 5 days for people to conserve revenue or expenses. I've heard some people say, hey, we may take on project-based work that we didn't normally take on before just because we don't know what next year is going to look like. And if we can kind of stack that stuff a little bit going into the end of the year, beginning of next year, kind of can maybe cushion against, the unexpected. There's definitely the other side, which is, hey, internal IT for slightly larger companies are maybe got to be cut down a little bit, which open up the door for the managed services, community, right? Because they can either do co-manage or augment the internal IT department, or, maybe even that turns into a fully managed account, because, the internal IT staff kind of, went away, at least for a little while. So, understanding what you are willing to do and not willing to do. I feel like some people maybe, we've been hard fought at, hey, don't go underneath of your standard. Do you feel like people may kind of flex a little bit because they're worried about, net new revenue?
This is a great question because I feel like that is the number one area that gets MSPs in trouble is like if they have been defining and curating a single offering, for example, and they're aiming to try and get all their customers on the one thing, single plan, where everybody is on the same offering, paying the same, per seat cost and so on. I think it's a slide back to start to offer all these piecemeal options in the monthly invoice because I think it creates operational inefficiency for the MSP to manage. Not only that, but I think clients are very poor judges of the things that they need in their environment in most cases. So when you give them the option of saving money on something, I think the message that we send implicitly is we think you don't need this, and so it's okay to opt out of it. And we're seeing obviously the shift with cybersecurity, where a lot of these things are really not optional anymore. And compound to that, the problem that we've had in increasing our prices to really help support the changes necessary to the MSP stack to drive the cybersecurity initiatives and whatnot. And you see where it starts to become a problem. One of the interesting stats that we use at Scalepad is that we grabbed it from one of Paul Dippel's webinars. I think he talks about 25% of MSPs are actually losing money on a yearly basis, and this is because they're highly inefficient, potentially, and just not able to get the right price for the stack. And so, but who am I to say that you should not, provide flexibility to your clients? But I think you should think about the psychology of that. And I think some people are convinced that, good, better, best is definitely the way to go. But I think the Academy of MSP teachings shows otherwise. That single offering, single plan drives operational maturity, and you get to deliver everything that your client needs at all times. And so,
Yeah, I agree. I definitely I think one of the major issues when you start kind of, you know, breaking out all these other sub offerings is kind of managing the billing, right? Like some of the margins are so low on some of this stuff
yeah.
that if you're not getting paid timely, you're basically losing money just getting paid late is the best way to say it. So I think that, I know there's a lot of conversation around trying to streamline billing and automate billing. But when you start creating all these wrinkles, I think that becomes a lot harder to keep up with.
Yeah. Well, one of the things in that presentation you talked about, the 9 tricks to building a $1.2 million MSP with a staff of 2, is actually the accounts receivable component. Very early in our journey, one of the requirements to signing a contract was ACH, and we gave no option other than to have ACH on file. And this got rid of a lot of those sort of, CD options that clients would have to delay a check or pay right around net 30, or maybe stretch it to net 40, net 45, because ultimately we're not banks, and that was never part of the plan. And so we got very, very crisp with that in the contract language, and we just never offered that capability.
So did you automatically pull, or did you was that just, hey, on the first of the month I'm going to automatically pull from your account this amount, no question?
100%. Yeah. And so obviously with the ability to adjust quantities based on staff prorations, they hired a couple people or lost a couple of people, we go both up or down as necessary in that invoicing. And all that invoicing was, automatic. In the beginning, we used, QuickBooks and Connect Booster. Later on, we moved to Zoho, and Zoho had its own built-in platform for all of that. So, but highly automated, because who likes doing, billing reconciliation at the end of the month? And so that's definitely a 2 thumbs down for me. And so once we put that pretty much on autopilot, having the ACH in place, and in Canada we call it EFT, was a game changer, because we don't touch anything at month end other than to adjust staff quantities on the invoice, as they change. And so that's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, 100%. How did you do it based on the AD or Office 365 user, or how did you true up when they cut someone or added someone?
Yeah, so at the very beginning, I think AD can be tricky because sometimes you have role accounts, sometimes you have, contractors, sometimes you people that sort of muddy the waters a bit. So we've always managed that piece manually to start, and then we just stay on top of the changes, every time they change. I realize that sometimes you might make a change in flight and not be able to update the invoice right away. But because we're using sort of cloud-based systems and stuff like that, it's always really easy to make the changes. And every couple months, we go back and we make sure that nothing's offside too much. And if there were any changes or new hires or things that we missed or that we didn't add, we'll just go ahead and update those. Never retroactively charging clients for those, of course, it's our mistake, but that's been the process so far, and that's been working for us.
Yeah, 100%. Let's talk to us about what is Scalepad. I know like the name changed somewhere along the line.
Yeah.
Like if somebody's seeing you guys for the first time in the window, what's the what's the story? What are we looking at?
Sure. Yeah, so I think a little context is good. Obviously, we got our start as Warranty Master. A lot of people are familiar with that name as the leader in warranty lookups and warranty reporting of your entire fleet, because we do it across workstations, servers, Apple, and network devices, Cisco SmartNet, Meraki, you name it. And so the platform had been growing and evolving quite a bit over the last few years to include now software asset management, the warranty marketplace of adding extended warranties to devices and all that stuff. And I think Warranty Master started to lose a bit of its specificity, because it was no longer just that. And so at that point, the company, about October 2020, rebranded to Scalepad, with the moniker meaning, we want to help MSPs scale their business. And one of the things that Lifecycle Manager, which is the current name of the product, and I'll get to that in a second, does is it provides a really interesting opportunity number, sales opportunity number based on all the warranties or status of devices that are expired or could use a replacement or could use a warranty extension. And so the average revenue opportunity across the majority of MSPs is pretty staggering. And so as Scalepad evolved, we acquired Backup Radar in November of 2021, and now we had two products. And so we had the challenge of like, how do we build a multi-brand or multi-product company? And so we elevated Scalepad to be the company brand, and we renamed the product to Lifecycle Manager, which made a lot more sense for what it does. And Lifecycle Manager is really what was used to be Warranty Master and has evolved to be this product that really covers the entire life cycle of the asset, from purchase and tracking. We connect to PSA, RMM documentation, and a lot of your other tools and services that you have in your stack to bring data in. We analyze it for insights. We provide reports on hardware, on software, on all the opportunities that exist to replace assets or to extend warranties. And then sort of manage that also with the backup insights. So now we also produce backup insights from Backup Radar right in Lifecycle Manager to give you a heads up for VCIOs. And one of our recent releases, of course, just this week on October 12th or last week on October 12th, the days just merge into each other, is our scorecards and roadmaps feature. And so this is now even giving more functionality to the account manager or VCIO function to have those strategic planning meeting conversations with clients, and have a lot of the data that is coming into these be mostly automated from the insights that we're already leveraging in Lifecycle Manager. So a lot of stuff has happened over the last little while. Backup Radar continues to evolve as well. We've been really, really pleasantly surprised with how much partners love Backup Radar and how much it abstracts the reporting across their multiple platforms.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, you would hope, at least the vision was, hey, if you just buy one solution, then it's one plan to fit them all. But I think realistically, it doesn't always work that way. So Backup Radar kind of like covers the gamut, right? Like, you can pull all that stuff into one place and then at least get reporting across multiple vendors. So that's cool. The life cycle manager part. So how do the warranties work? Like if I have a Dell or an HP or whatever it is, right? Is it like a third party solution? And then like, how do you engage if you need to actually use it?
Yeah, so there's two components. One is the procurement piece, and one is the service piece. The procurement, the part I think is one of the areas that has been most painful for MSPs, because like if you are an MSP and you've had to buy an extended warranty after the initial purchase of the device, you know how painful this is. You have a ton of back and forth with the vendor or the distributor, and you got to do this multiple times for multiple devices. And if you have a customer with a fleet where they may not be on all Dell or all HP or all Lenovo, then you're dealing with different email streams for different types of things. So we kind of removed a lot of that pain and make it really easy to just find the assets that need a warranty replacement, 3 clicks to check out and buy the warranties on a 1 or 3 year basis right inside the app. For servers and network devices, we offer even a couple of different SLAs. So you can do a 4-hour SLA or you can do a 24-hour SLA. And for servers and workstations, those are actually on-site with parts SLAs, which are delivered through the same network of vendors that the same tier one OEMs are using. So the people that Dell and Lenovo and HP are using are the same folks that we're using behind the scenes to deliver that service as well. And we deliver it in multiple countries, not just the US and Canada, but also in Europe, Australia, New Zealand, and we have coverage in several countries. So all that stuff's in the KB. Now, let's say you need service. We actually give you a simple sort of form online to go say, yeah, this device needs warranty. We actually communicate with the MSP on this, at which point the MSP can nominate an on-site contact for the service provider to sort of continue the process with them directly. Let's say the MSP is remote. They don't work with that client in that city necessarily, but they can still sort of nominate the on-site contact for the service provider to reach out to and do the replacement of the asset or the repair of the asset, whatever is required. So yeah, I think a lot of time savings there, but making it really easy. And one of the things we're seeing is the margin that MSPs, it's very competitive pricing to the OEM warranties. And so the MSPs can make a lot of revenue from the warranty sales themselves. In fact, the majority of partners are paying multiple times over for Scalepad products just by, a few warranties that they might sell. And so as the impending recession gets closer, consider having a look at this. We have a free edition of our product of Lifecycle Manager. So you can go in, plug in all your integrations and start to see a lot of the insights and data. And from there, if you want to actually purchase a warranty, then you'll upgrade to our Pro plan. But it gives you the option to see what's going on across your clients, get an insight into the DMI score, which is something we launched about a year ago, Digital Maturity Index. So based on all these insights or status of the asset and warranty and age, et cetera, we provide sort of a credit score for the assets inside the network.
So I guess you can report all of this, walk into your customer's office and say, here's a list of all your stuff. You can see the age, you can see the warranty status. Here's your credit score. And yeah, we need to fix some of this, or you need to pay us more to deal with the pain in the ass tax, I call it, of doing of warranty stuff, which quite frankly, at this point, I mean, back before it was a problem, I would just say, hey, you're out of warranty repairs, you're buying a new one, just replace the whole unit. I'm not so sure that can be the answer today. I think it's a little bit harder to do that.
Yeah, and I think there's also an interesting shift in the conscientiousness of businesses about just flat out replacing devices that might still be functional or working, and I think being able to keep devices a little bit longer but not introduce additional risk into the business is more top of mind. I think MSPs are having better conversations where that's concerned for sure. But you mentioned the reports, and the hardware reports is probably the number one thing that our partners love, because you can schedule them to go out straight to clients. And so we've seen stories from partners where they just automate the reports to the client, and the client's telling me, hey, it looks like we have a couple devices that have warranties expiring. Let's go ahead and renew those or replace them or what have you. And so the clients are actually driving the initiatives, which is great. With the new scorecards feature, we also publish the DMI score, and the MSP can go through and provide their commentary on the different areas that are needing some strategic initiatives. Some of these are automated from the insights that we get in the platform already, but you can also provide some of your custom areas for initiatives, the typical customer
you can put in here,
yeah.
Still has not turned on MFA, red.
Precisely, or is still running Windows XP on a machine that runs a CNC cutting machine on the manufacturing floor. Things like that. There's so many edge cases where you need a little bit of customization capability in the scorecard. So that's one of the things we delivered with that as well.
But that absolutely happens, by the way. That stuff's absolutely still out there.
Well, and I think MSPs in general, we love to say, we love to drive within the context of standardization. I think we're always striving for that. The industry certainly pushes a ton of standardization on MSPs. But there are edge cases, and there are situations where owners really push back on the inconvenience of turning on MFA, and it takes you literally years to get them moved over, because you don't necessarily want to fall out of favor with them by forcing them to do certain things. And so I get that there's little things that introduce changes to or non-standardization, and the backups is another example. You ingest a new client and they come with their own backup platform, and I understand that the desire is to immediately move them onto your standard, stack product, but that may not be possible. They may have compliance or reporting or historical retention requirements and need to keep a couple platforms. You may, heck, as an MSP, decide you're going to switch backup platforms, and now you have a multi-year of dealing with 2 or 3 different platforms as you make that transition. And so Backup Radar is helping abstract all of that so you can centralize the reporting, and not only that, but also plug into multiple platforms and manage all the ticketing with your PSA in one place. So we're seeing a ton of that efficiency already paying dividends for MSPs for sure.
That's awesome. It definitely should take. Actually, Bruce jumped in here and said, can vouch for the ease of generating quotes for clients. It only takes a few minutes to get a quote generated purchase via Scalepad. As a comparison, I spend way more time than that if I'm forced to order through a distributor.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I remember creating the Excel spreadsheet, going to the RMM, pulling out the serial number,
manually.
figuring out the
Yeah.
date of the and like 2 hours into this 1-page Excel report, you're like, what am I doing with my
Yeah.
time?
Well, thanks for the question, Bruce. And I think the other piece, some of the vision that drove some of the initiatives, capability, and proposals in Scalepad and Lifecycle Manager was this idea of democratizing the conversation, the strategic conversation with clients. Because I find that in the majority of MSPs, the average MSP is 7 people, according to Jay McBain. And in that size of MSP, you typically have the owner is processing the quotes. And so even if you have, tier L2 or L3 techs that are having, good strategic conversations, you still have this bottleneck of the owner running the quoting process effectively. And so what we wanted to do is provide a little bit of a launch pad for having strategic initiative conversations. Be like, hey, it looks like there's 3 devices that could be replaced, and you can configure the settings for what your typical workstation replacement cost is, and you can provide a little bit of that high level conversation for budgetary approval. That doesn't have to be a full on quote, because you still have to go find the individual machines and all this stuff and deal with the distributors later, but at least the approval stage of the process with the client can be made a lot easier than to, hey, we'll get you a quote next week, and then you have to go and do a bunch of work behind the scenes to even have that conversation in the first place.
So when let's say you do buy the warranty through your platform, does that go back in and update the date in the doc or the PSA system, or how does that work to track it?
Yes, sir. So we actually dedupe all the warranty data from assets across the multiple sources. And of course, if we are getting information from a vendor, let's say the OEM warranty of that workstation was 1 year, and then you bought a Scalepad or Lifecycle Manager warranty extension on that, we'll actually push that warranty update to all your platforms, because we know that that warranty is now extended and that device is covered for longer. In the case where we can write back the warranty, places like IT Glue or ConnectWise or AutoTask will write that warranty information back to those places as well. Some RMM platforms also let us write warranty back. I don't have the list off the top of my head, but some of them don't. And so you obviously rely on PSA or documentation typically to pull that information. But and of
Yeah.
course Scalepad reports or Lifecycle Manager reports.
So what's included in the free tier versus what do you have to pay for to get to the next level?
So this has been an evolution as well. I think we wanted to provide something with some kind of value. And so in the free edition, and I'll go search for a link and I'll drop it in the chat in a minute, but in the free edition, you can get a lot of the same insights that you get on a pro plan. You just can't see any of the actual warranty dates. You can't purchase warranties on a free edition. You'll have to upgrade to pro for that. Also, software asset management is not included in that free edition, but you can get a lot of the insights DMI and start to look at that type of conversation. And for things like scorecards and roadmaps, which is the feature that just came out, you can nominate up to 1 client that you want to get this functionality for. So if you want to, give it a try and see the full front to back process of doing that strategic planning or conversation, you can do that for up to 3 clients. So you can switch the client that you nominate in the platform up to 3 times, and you can do it with 3 different clients. So we wanted to give some value and show the capabilities there for sure.
That's awesome. So super Swiss Army knife approach, right? To cover a lot of different things. Time saver, it sounds like, definitely on the planning to have the conversation with your customer, hopefully quarterly or whatever that interval is. And it sounds like the warranty thing sounds like it could be a profit center, because I'm going to be honest with you, a lot of people, I feel like, lose track of the whole warranty story, to be honest.
Yeah, well, I mean, we use it as a bellwether for replacing hardware. But I'll be honest, a lot of customers I've had over the years are very anti-warranty altogether. And so we don't give them options for things like servers or network devices. Those are critically important because they affect multiple people at any given time. But I get that workstations, maybe not in the supply chain of today, but workstations are generally replaceable or consumable devices. So, when clients oppose those, we're not too concerned about it. But certainly servers, network devices, and other devices of that ilk, it's important, for us to
Yeah.
deliver a service that we can rely on too. So I like that. I think it's, clients are going to vary in their approach to that as well, and having the flexibility is good.
So how do you discover, I mean, is there an agent that you install on, or do you just pull from the PSA RMM list, or how do you discover the information?
Yeah, so the PSA RMM documentation stack of the MSP is what we plug into, because those places are what have the serial numbers. Certainly RMM has that information. You can plug in multiple integrations. We've seen, especially in this M&A day and age, that we have parent organizations with MSPs that are using multiple platforms, and Lifecycle Manager allows them to abstract that as well, because you can plug into multiple RMMs and bring in all the data and have all the clients sort of separate but together in a way. And so we pull the serial numbers from RMM, documentation, PSA, wherever we can find them. We do the dedupe, and then we do all the magic lookup and stuff behind the scenes, at least for the warranty lookup piece. But we're also doing all the insights of like age and warranty status, and providing a bit of that DMI piece.
Is that the same way the software inventory part works?
Yeah, precisely. So we pull all the software records from RMM primarily, and then we're maintaining our own library of what is the current version of everything that's available in the estate of that MSP. One of the things we've actually found is people have often complained that some RMM software will occasionally report that the device is properly patched, for the latest Windows feature release, for example, but it's not. And we're able to, or that it ran the update but didn't, or something failed and it's still reporting that it succeeded. And so they end up with Windows feature releases or versions that are no longer supported, which of course can be challenging for many number of reasons. But we have actually had MSPs tell us, yeah, Scalepad or Lifecycle Manager was the tool that told us that these devices were not on supported versions of Windows, where our RMM was actually not reporting on that. The other piece is that we are focused on specifically raising that kind of insight, where I think a lot of people get into RMM just to do a couple of automation things or to do some of the remote control stuff, and they are not tapping into 90 or 80% of the functionality of their RMM. But Lifecycle Manager is specifically designed to raise that kind of insight and opportunity for MSPs.
That's awesome. So a few people join here live on the call. I'm going to give everybody a chance to jump in and just chat a little bit. If
Of
you're
course.
being talkative today, feel free to unmute and chime in. But zooming out, guys, I mean, I would love to hear what you guys are doing on. Are you doing device as a service, especially when it comes to the core stuff, right? The networking gear, like backup server stuff that's not already in the cloud, or like how are you guys handling that? I know some people on the lower end try and go with the like low end style NAS devices, but I think that I guess there's a place for those, right? But generally speaking, on the core stuff, I know people have had a hard time getting a hold of, like Elise was saying earlier, switches and firewalls and access points, and hopefully some of that stuff's cleared up just a little bit. But be curious to hear what you guys are doing. And now I love to pick on my buddy Matthew Fox over there, which on the side's probably doing these cool emoji keyboards that he likes to make for people. But what are you guys doing out there? Are you selling it? Are you warrantying it? Are you offering it as a service as part of the monthly recurring? What's the plan? Or maybe everything in between. Quiet today. I think I scared people.
I'll give you my answer to get the
Sure.
conversation started.
Yeah.
Like many, I think there was a lot of buzz around hardware as a service or device as a service a little while back, and we did look at it in earnest. We even talked to our bank and tried to figure out some kind of leasing arrangement, because in most of those scenarios we'd be leasing the equipment. We didn't want to have an upfront capital expense to support this and have that risk potentially. But I'll be honest, in my opinion, for our business, it was more trouble than it was worth to do that. And in most cases, clients were perfectly fine just buying their own equipment or leasing their own equipment and just having us take care of, the actual procurement and everything else. So
Hmm.
we didn't go down the path of hardware or devices as a service, but of course, mileage varies.
Well, I mean, so when you went back to do that, was it because when you lease something or sell something to the end customer, it's their credit individually rather than you having to like bear the umbrella for everyone else? Was that the kind of the sticking point, or how did that work?
Yeah, I think, when you start to look at programs like these, you often have the mindset or the goal of solving one client's initial problem. And because MSPs have this tendency of like jumping into a service when one client requires it, but not necessarily planning for, okay, what happens when all 50 or 75 of our clients are doing this? Can we actually carry the debt risk of like leasing for potentially 1,000 devices out there if we were doing hardware as a service for everybody? And as a two-person company at the time, we just decided that was not of interest to us. Obviously, again, mileage varies for different people, but that was kind of the thinking back then.
Yeah. It's interesting as the manufacturers are starting to roll out monthly programs, under a term, right? 3 year, 2 year, 1 year, whatever. Like even Microsoft started rolling out an as a service, kind of device option for like Surface equipment, for example. It seems like a lot of the manufacturers have something, right? Of this ilk. I just don't know how closely the MSP has looked at it because largely, it's kind of geared for the manufacturer to do business directly with the end customer. And I know that over the years, that's kind of been a, kind of sticking point, right? The
Mhm.
partner's like, hey, I brought this end customer to the table. There's a larger program here. Stop trying to sell around me, right? Kind of thing. So I
Well,
think from an MSP, that may be
mm,
why that doesn't get mileage.
and there's certainly, the smaller MSPs have no weight to throw around in that conversation with the vendors. And so I think that also compounds the issue of like, you want to do this, but you won't get the time of day from the vendor necessarily to support your initiative of starting with the 110 device client and growing from there. Other vendors are very much channel focused, and they know that sell through growth is going to come from starting with the 10-person organization downstream. But I don't think everybody necessarily has that line of sight.
Yeah, 100%. How you doing today, Darren? Even Darren's
Doing
even
doing doing
very
well, doing well. Just keeping busy. Yeah,
awesome. So I hopefully you're going to be connecting with the guys tomorrow in San Diego area.
I am going to. Yes, I am. I am going to do that. So
I was going to say, don't get too busy while they're in town.
I mean, I have to make priorities for certain things, right? And it's got to be one of those.
Wow, that and
But
Chick-fil-A,
without
right?
without you there, I mean, come on.
Wow,
Uh,
Chick-fil-A. Well, I have a question for the group,
yeah.
because we're October is practically over. We're a couple months from the end of the year. I'm curious what everybody is thinking or planning as their sort of key initiatives or plans or challenge that they're trying to solve in 2023. I'm curious to hear from the group.
First thing that comes to my mind is make sure everybody's bills are paid up because I'm worried about them not paying their bills in 2023. I don't know. That's a reflex. I think that's what I think about.
Yeah, got to make sure you got that you can bankroll that Super Bowl tickets, right? So
Wow, I mean, if my team gets to the Super Bowl, everything's on hold. I gotta go to which, hey, I have a shot. I mean, I'm undefeated so far. So I'm gonna have
yeah.
to roll with that. Darren, what's your priorities from now to the end of the year, buddy? Other than Chick-fil-A and bus
I'm
tours.
not. I'm not thinking that far ahead right now, guys. Sorry. Just I'm still I'm still in 2022, so I'm
All
not
right.
gonna. Nothing comes to mind as of yet, but yeah, I'm thinking next year is going to be pretty nasty. So uh, yeah, I should
Yeah.
prepare for
Well,
that as much as possible.
that's fair, Darren, and somewhat unsurprising, if I'll be honest. Again, average MSP is 7 people, and at the 7-person size of business, most MSPs are still doing a lot of the multi-hat type of things. The owners are doing accounting and HR and payroll and sales and tier 3, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think the mountain that it feels like to move the strategic conversation with clients is often seen as a daunting process. So that's kind of selfishly what Scalepad is trying to address, is helping make it easier for MSPs to have those strategic conversations, because it's clearly we're distracted by turning the gears on some of the reactive technical problems. So I get the challenge.
100%.
That is definitely true. Lots of hats are worn over here. So.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
then I feel like the hats only get worse. But I mean, you could also outsource some of it if that's possible. But
Yeah.
bookkeeper's only as good as having the bills in hand, right?
That is very true.
Bruce,
Everybody
you
else is so quiet.
Yeah,
Let's pick on someone.
I always like to pick on Matthew Fox, but I already picked on him. He must be busy underneath the hood somewhere. What about Bruce? Bruce, you chimed in earlier. You're using Scalepad already.
Yeah, it's been a great product.
Are
Thanks,
you?
Bruce.
Sounds like you've used the warranty lifecycle part of it. Have you kind of, stumbled into the other pieces yet, or no?
No, we haven't done that. So we're part of a consortium, MSP, and so I had to really ramp down the subscription that we have because of all the assets that we got. So no, I use it mainly for the warranties, but it has been an awesome product for doing the warranties. I mean, it just makes it so drop dead simple. Like, for example, I just went in and pulled a warranty that I got to prep for a meeting. It took me 2 minutes to pull the quote and get it generated. And I've got a PDF ready to give to the client.
Wow, I can tell you how many times I went to Dell, and then I put a request into the account manager, and like a week later, I finally got the quote. And then I'm like, oh, by the way, I need you to get these other ones. And like another week later, I got the other ones.
Yeah.
And then
actually, the only thing that really sucks about it is when a server is not supported. So sometimes let's call them lower end, air quotes, lower end servers where the motherboard's not supported. It's a desktop unit. And I hate it when that happens, because this very same server that I pulled a quote for, it comes in and out of that. And last year I couldn't renew the warranty on this via Scalepad. I had to go out and get a quote from Lenovo for it. It literally, I'm not joking, it took me 8 months, because just all the running around, and it was misbilled. I had to get a credit. Then I had to go through all those games. Horrendous.
wow.
Well,
8
I can tell
months.
you, Bruce, we are definitely adding more and more model support in the platform in the last few months, because I think there was the number of models that exist are in the hundreds of thousands. I'm not even joking when I say that number. And so getting support for all these models also depends heavily on whether the service providers will be able to support parts. And one of the things that's challenging, for instance, we get a lot of requests is, oh, can you please support Microsoft Surface? But these devices have a repairability score of like -10 in most cases, and so our service providers hate supporting that, and so we had to take those off of the supported list, for example. So there are little edge cases and challenges of that nature, but we've definitely been increasing the supported model hardware that's
I
out
feel
there.
like Microsoft just replaces them. I don't think I've ever seen a Surface repaired. I think they just replaced it.
Yeah. I have a MSP operations question for you. When you were running your MSP, what metric did you use for determining the noise, how much noise has been generated by a client? And then what thresholds did you put on that for those parameters to go out and soften the noise?
Well, that's a
Yeah.
great question.
So I think there's probably a few numbers out there that are sort of bellwethers for noise meters. One of those is 0.5 tickets per user per month is best in class. Anything more than that, you should be looking at what's creating the noise, what's creating the tickets. I think addressing root cause issues is often the thing that drives down the ticket noise. And it certainly was in our case, whether we could provide self-serve options. In the beginning stages of my MSP, a lot of the stuff we were doing was Mac. When I brought on my first business partner, he was 100% Windows guy. And so we kind of decided we wanted to be platform agnostic right at that stage. And so we would do whatever was needed for either platform. But a lot of it was built on automation. So if people needed software, they could go into the little self-service app and install it themselves, because the tool would give given them that capability to do that, instead of creating a ticket for me to go and manually, install the software. And so I think those investments, early investments in areas like that, actually paid a ton of dividends as you start to grow the fleet. And you have, we were supporting, I want to say, about 800 people between the two of us, right around the point where we brought on a third person. And so I think the average MSP is maybe 200 or so people per tech. And so certainly we were driving some higher numbers there for sure.
Yeah, so you had leverage of 400 to 1 on a tech. Yeah, that's way higher.
Yeah.
I mean, automation's king, but the other thing you should be doing, I know there's people out there that like specialize in this thing, is like your profitability per account per month, right? Or per quarter, per year, right? Because I mean, obviously the time calculation Luis just mentioned kind of factors into that. But then like once you've passed your labor part, which is, where you're going to make most of your money, also obviously, on all of the downstream products that you may be bundling into the account, right? Like, you work backwards. I know Luis mentioned Paul Dipple, right? He always said 20% net is best in class, right? So if you start looking at your profitability per account, and if you're getting close to being there's no profitability to the account, then you start to question, is it a good account? But, like you need to have like a median profitability score, per account, and then work backwards from that. So you should probably be looking at, I don't know if the PSAs easily pump that out, or if there's third-party products, I know for sure definitely are out there that do this. They literally pull all that data out and then begin to show you your actual math at the account by account level. So yeah, I mean, back to, hey, not doing the break fix guys because they weren't profitable, although some people say that they're profitable, and I guess each their own. I mean, on the managed services accounts, right, because it's flat rated, it's kind of on you and your team to make sure that you kind of stay above the fold, or else you're working for free.
Yeah, a couple comments. Great points, George. One, there's a platform that I know a few MSPs are using, and you have to be careful in bringing tools onto the business, because I think it's important to have the management layer that can actually deal with addressing, the challenges that you discover. But one is called Cognition 360, which definitely pulls out all that operational data from your PSA. I'll stick it in the chat. I've heard a number of partners mention this app, and it's worthwhile having a look. But the other thing I'll say, one of the other numbers that Paul Dipple put out there quite a bit was the 250K of revenue per employee. I think that sort of basically translated roughly to that 80% gross margin that you kind of needed. That's the number you need to make the math work and not be in that lower 25% that's losing money. And then there's also, back when I was at IT, we were talking about there's like 5 numbers that you wanted to make sure you had at least 10% year over year compound annual growth, at least 20% EBITDA is best in class for sure. And if you're looking to do any kind of M&A deal, the acquirer typically wants to see at least 20% adjusted EBITDA on the books. And so I think even if you don't plan to sell, having those numbers in view could be helpful to understand if you're running a profitable business or a turnkey business.
Well, I think, the other part of that is like, what's the smallest customer you'll take on, right? Like, if would you still take on a 2, 3, 4-man shop as an MSP for an end user? Like what's the lowest monthly recurring dollar amount you would, take on, right? Is that $1,500 a month? Is that $2,500 a month? I don't know, Luis.
We certainly created a threshold, and it was a monetary one. And so we would take on a 4-person business, but they'd have to pay like they were a 15-person business. And in some cases they understood the value and they would do it. But we kind of, and it was a little bit of a thumb in the wind kind of thing, but 15 people customer was where we decided was going to be the minimum that started to make sense, where they're kind of shifting their own focus to growing their business and not trying to save a penny at every opportunity. And so that was certainly the threshold for us with my MSP.
Okay, there it is, 15. That's the magic number. I think moving forward, said recession a couple times, but would you, if a customer came to you and you were on the, and I don't know how you handle this in the past, Luis, because you were through a couple of these in your time, but if somebody came to you and said, hey, listen, we don't know what's coming up. We want to see if you're willing to, kind of reduce services in order to help us kind of get by the turbulent period until we, kind of get past the other side. How would you handle those situations?
Yeah, I don't think anybody had a playbook for that at the beginning of the pandemic. And, I've had conversations with dozens of MSPs where everybody sort of had to deal with it in a ad hoc way. And we had customers come to us and demand, that we forgive a bill for like April of 2020. And in some cases, we went ahead and did that. We kind of put on the let's invest in the future of this relationship, and some of those clients came out stronger on the other end and have grown their businesses once activity resumed. And so it worked out. I think some MSPs will not be able to weather that necessarily, and some verticals are really challenging. If you support primarily food and beverage, for example, you're going to definitely have a challenge where that's concerned. But so I think mileage is going to vary. For me, I have found that the MSP is very well distributed across many verticals, and so we didn't really see any particular, concern or slowdown. If anything, obviously projects will slow down, but we kind of constantly think about, well, they're going to do them at some point eventually. It's a great time for us to hone our automation skills and start to get some more efficiency out of the team when you're not busy doing projects all the time. That's once we got through the crunch of doing VPN stuff at the beginning of the pandemic, we started to really focus on a little bit of that. We even got better at the automation piece and driving some of that efficiency internally. So lots of opportunities, just what Lindsay put on it.
Yeah, 100%. I'm curious to see people, in their next quarterly meeting, if you do, practice that, going into this last quarter before 2023, just basically talking about, hey, all these projects that are in the pipeline, right? Are they still going to be there? I know a lot of people, who took deposits for projects. I know that that's pretty common, right? Especially if there's external costs involved. Like what happens if your customer doesn't move forward with the project, cancels the project, puts the project on hold. So these are things that you can, kind of start that discussion right now, going into the end of the year, so that what'll happen moving forward. I think the work from home hybrid working thing, I think this is here for the long term. I know, and I think people are coming to the end of their leases, now, and deciding not to renew them at all in some cases, or just downsizing to maybe like a shared working environment. So I think that's all just continuing down the line from 2020. So, at the end of the day, I just think that, the one thing I did read, and I literally saw the article yesterday, is that they think security spending will continue to rise exponentially as everything else flattens or goes down in spending, just because that risk doesn't go down. It's definitely, an ongoing thing. So I know security, like we beat that conversation into the ground, but it changes all the time. So,
well, and the comment I have on that is that I think this is an area where we've talked a lot about this internally at Scalepad, is that MSPs on the smaller side, the 3, 5, 6, 7 people MSPs, also tend to have clients that are a little bit on the smaller size, and they are not necessarily growing as quickly, or they don't need as much strategic conversation as a quarterly business review, for example. And so they're having yearly conversations about some of the strategic initiatives. And so the front part of the year tends to be pretty loaded with QBRs or scorecard meetings and stuff like that. And the challenge there is of course, cybersecurity doesn't wait for you to have your strategic meeting with your clients. And so part of the challenge we're trying to solve is how can MSPs have a more continuous type of conversation about anything that really needs to be worked on, and be able to send that sort of spur of the moment report and be like, hey, this is really a concern as of the last 2 months. Here's a report on this. Here's a scorecard. Here's an initiative we should be planning to address in the next 3 months, and not wait until literally January of the next year to have that conversation. So that certainly is a challenge.
Yeah. Last thing that comes to mind, Luis, I'm sure as inflation and interest rates and all that stuff does things, do you think that affects the warranty renewal program pricing, or do you think that will pretty much maintain?
Well, we really didn't see obviously things like supply chain are probably going to affect that more than anything else. The availability of parts, the availability of, you know, shipping even, you know, saw an increase and stuff like that. But for the most part, you know, it was fairly minimal, and you know, we expect to see price increases for those types of things. And this is another great topic for MSPs to deal with, their own price increases, which we're so terrible at doing with our clients. And a lot of us end up doing years and years and years of the same, you know, even more stuff in our stack, but we're still offering the same price, and we're not adjusting that with clients. And so trickle effect for sure.
100%. So think about that, guys. Plan ahead and make sure that you have some sort of, you know, I know it's a little bit of a, you know, eggshell conversation, right? Because yeah, if the economy is going down and you're raising rates, but you haven't raised rates for 4 or 5 years or more, you know, you might need to like slowly do that instead of one large, you know, jump. So plan accordingly. Luis,
Yeah.
It's been a while. Appreciate you jumping on. Tell Eric we said hello. Thanks for kind of explaining the umbrella over there of things that you guys do, and putting a little bit of 2 cents into things, because that gives people ideas. We can find Luis and company at scalepad.com.
You got it.
Pretty easy. And you, obviously on all the social platforms, can't miss them. You know, these guys respond right away, which is great. You'll find this session was recorded. I know I had a couple of people jump on the beginning and ask, hey, do we record these? Of course we do. MSPinitiative.com under sessions. You'll see this one up there probably tomorrow. You guys can rewind, fast forward, send Luis your targeted questions that'll come out, which I'm sure always happens. And then obviously continue coming back Tuesdays, Thursdays, 1 o'clock Eastern time, or online, MSPinitiative.com. I hope that as we get closer towards November, I know not everybody's traveling, still love to see everybody down in Orlando, that second week of Orlando. I know, like, you know, a
I'll
couple
be
big
there.
conferences down there. So, you know, let's see you guys one last chance, hopefully, before everybody goes into hibernation. I'll have a few beers with Luis for sure. And who knows what free shirt. Today was Network Group. I took this shirt from the UK, but you know, we'll definitely keep these going. Thanks everybody for jumping on. Luis, talk to you soon, buddy. And we'll
All right,
catch you guys on the next one.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Bye.